Hello and welcome everyone. Andy Bryan here again from the Soul Pathway. And today I'm here delivering another Soul Pathway podcast. Today I'm here with Sandra Rojo, who does some incredible work. She's been a good friend of mine for a while, and she's been my shamanic healer, which has been fantastic. Some of the deep healing that I've gone through has been through Sandra, which has been phenomenal, really. But today we're not here so much to speak about shamanism, but we can touch on that a little bit. But we're here to speak about authentic living, what it means to live authentically. So I'm here with Sandra today, who actually runs a business, Journey to Authentic Living, to speak about like how do we really become who we are so that we can live authentically and really live the lives that we were born to live. Before we jump into that though, I'm going to welcome Sandra. Thank you, Sandra, for joining me. Tell us a bit more about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. That's a wonderful introduction. Thank you. I'm only honored to have helped you on your journey. And of course, we help each other out, and I'm honored that we're friends as well. So thank you for that introduction. Yes. So I am a success mindset coach. And as Andy said, I definitely have, I'm formally trained under the Sandra Ingerman lineage. And I've part of my journey as a shamanic practitioner has been one that has only been a beautiful journey. And I'm also working with a neuroplasticity based modality called faster EFT, and I'm a practitioner of that, and that works a lot with the mind and the mechanics of the mind. I call it the language or the language of the subconscious, really.
Cool.
So I've been doing this for a long time. I have a degree in psychology and extensive training in leadership and coaching in general. So that's a little bit of my background. Of course, I'm sure Andy can elaborate a little bit more on that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know you've got training in so many things, which is fantastic. I'm not familiar with faster EFT so much. I've done EFT, so to speak, and it's fantastic. Tell us a bit more about
Well, I think you
fast.
would really like it, Andy. You would really like it because Robert Smith created Faster EFT, and it's a blend of NLP, a little bit of hypnosis, EFT, and some other workings there. And so, we'll definitely need to talk about that.
Very cool, very cool. No, I love all of that, as you know. I'm a big fan of hypnotherapy. Love
Yes,
EFT and
yes.
neurolinguistic programming as well, and to blend them all together is just it's just amazing, isn't it? Really.
Amazing. Yes, it is.
So let's jump into your journey first of all. I would be interested to find out what led you to do this work to begin with, because I know from my perspective, I see you as someone that really does live authentically, really does connect with, the rawness of who you are in many ways, but lives with the flow of life and the changes that we go through. So I'd be interesting to know, first of all, what led you on this journey to authentic living before.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Gosh, where do I begin? Right, because it's definitely you and I have similar paths. And I was born and raised in San Diego, California. And in California, it was considered very progressive thinking as far as personal development. A lot of our great philosophies and ways of life and quite frankly, the New Age movement, if you will, sort of, I think, birthed in California. And so my journey really is one because of my mother, because of her spirituality and her desire to really understand those more spiritual sides. And she was very psychic as well. I won't go into that, of course. But it was just always very curious, very expansive in the knowledge and the learning. And so that's kind of where it began. And then just as far as really making this a life for myself. I never thought that I would be a coach. And of course, coaching is really kind of a new field, if you will. But having lived in Italy for many years and working alongside, even in the medical field, for me, it was really important to dive into the field of personal development. Journey to Authentic Living, the name of my company, really birthed from a philosophical concept, a Greek concept called eudaimonia, which basically means many things, but it's a combination of human flourishing and potential and the meaning of life and so forth. And really the human excellence is what Socrates and Plato and Aristotle all talked about, human excellence. And so having worked with people in personal development as a coach and doing some counseling, really the bottom line, if we could look at it, in a broader sense, people really struggle with living purposefully and wanting to have some form of fulfilling and satisfying life. Many times we use the word happy. I kind of have a little bit of an issue with happiness or the word happy because it's ephemeral, right? We don't want something that's just fleeting. We want something, we want to be able to stand on solid foundation. And so the journey to authentic living birthed from eudaimonia. It came into saying, no, wait a minute, my clients and the people I'm seeing around me and my colleagues, including myself, I wanted to really live in a flourishing, authentic way. And we do that by getting to the root of our problems and our issues and what is stressing us, right? What are the impediments to life? And this is where it all began. And one of the two main issues that I found with people is that people are living a life heavily based on other people's expectations of them is one of the number one impediments to living authentically.
Definitely. I can relate to that, definitely. As
You
people
can too.
pleasers and, that people pleaser mentality is something that is, wanting to make sure that they are happy with who we are, and it's
That's
not
right.
about whether they're happy with who we are. It's about, are we happy with ourselves?
Amen. Absolutely. And, we have a lot of familial and societal conditioning, don't we? In psychology, they call this conditioning or to decondition. And, some of that we won't ever really be able to rid ourselves of. I think many of the conditions that have been taught or that we've learned either vicariously or directly through our parents and society, not all of them are bad, right? Some of them are very good things, like some form of scruples or morality, right? To keep us out of harming other people and so forth, right? So you have this consciousness. So some of that conditioning has been good. And religion was the number one and still almost the number one motivator for people to measure their own morality. I don't feel like I need a religion to do that myself,
Can I
but
ask you a
some people
question there?
do. Yeah.
So, we talk, well, I've spoken about religious dogma, and I'm not saying that it's fully a bad thing at all either. And I think there's aspects of religion that are beautiful, and we need to find our own path and what is true for us anyway. But if I was to ask you, how do you feel religion impedes the authenticity that comes through in the way that we live our lives?
That's a great question. Well, the first thing that comes into my mind, and having grown up, first of all, I want to say I'm very grateful that my parents raised me with a religion, because I think somehow it's a good foundation or a good direction, if you will. Um, I think personally and professionally, what happens is that depending on the religion that you practice, let's say a Judeo-Christian religion, so whether it's Christianity or Islam or even the Jewish faith, um, really, how should we say, it does not allow much room for exploration outside of that dogma, or that I was a Buddhist for a long time as well, and it wasn't quite as strict, I think. But anybody could really make anything a religion, can't they? And so there's these rules, so to speak,
Yeah.
these guidelines that many times do not fit our where we're going in life. So I'm just going to give you a banal example. So someone who perhaps the religion says you shouldn't get a divorce, and you're married, and you're quite miserable, and you're trying to make your marriage work, but your religion tells you that it's a sin, or it's frowned upon to get a divorce. But in the meantime, you're living an inauthentic life, because you can't explore. What if your spouse doesn't allow you to grow, or doesn't want that? It doesn't matter the gender, right? But just to kind of give you a scenario. So what are you going to do, right? You
Yeah.
can't do something because the religion supposedly says you shouldn't do this, because you'll be sinning, for example.
Yeah.
Or even maybe a Buddhist could be that way. It's your karma or something like that. And so I think that what happens is that we need to really explore what that means outside of that religion, what it means to be a person of still keep higher standards for ourselves, but at the same token, it just doesn't always match, right, where we need to go in life.
Definitely. And there's so much you spoke about there. There's so much you touched upon there, and some of the things that highlighted when I was listening to you there was sort of things like the strict guidelines or strict rules. And for me, spirituality and even living authentically is about having no rules specifically, but creating those rules for ourselves, and knowing that there even are no boundaries, are there? But it's like we can be fulfilled in the knowing that we can be integral in the way that we live our lives, but we don't need to be, batched down, if that's the right word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it is a fine line, isn't it? Because, for example, I don't know who coined this. I read it one time in Italian many, many years ago, and it says, love not who you are, but only what you will become. Now, that could be interpreted two ways, right?
Mm.
Because we want to love ourselves the way we are, with our shadow side and our light side, the parts of us that we're blind spotted by, for example, right? But at the
Yeah.
same token, I think that we need to master who we are. We need to master, part of that is self-acceptance. And I'm not quite sure if religion is able to transcend that part. Religion tells us already how we should act and how we should be. It does not allow us to explore anything outside of that. And I'm generalizing here for your audience, just I don't want to sound dogmatic myself in my opinion at all,
No.
but to say that it is very confined.
Yeah.
And I've studied many sects, SECT,
Yeah.
of Christianity, and it really doesn't leave a lot of room. Maybe Christian Science would leave more room for exploration, but other than that, you have to abide by those rules. And
Mm.
maybe that's why a lot of people inside religion, you find a lot of sexual issues as well, but that's another topic. People who are so confined, yes, to exploring, and they end up doing a lot of things behind the scenes, if that would make sense.
So, some things you mentioned there as well, like for me, like when I look at religion, and I've got nothing against it either, but for me, when I work with clients, people come to me and they if they've got religious upbringing, they've got strict guidelines and rules. They're like, but don't want to lose those aspects of self. I want to, enliven those things. And I say, you'll never enliven them. It's all about connecting with the soul, and that's all about that authentic living as well. Anyway, and then moving away from those strict guidelines and saying, look, my soul is my essence, and I'm not going to confine myself by what constructs are placed upon me, but I'm only going to allow myself to become. And I love that quote that you mentioned just a minute ago about love becoming love, or something like that.
Becoming. Yes,
Beautiful,
yes.
absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Yeah, because we are always becoming. Like, for example, I've had a couple people bring to my attention, which could seem like a little bit of a challenge. It's like you need to learn. The old saying is that we teach best what we need to learn, and so this individual was looking at my journey to authentic living and saying, are you authentic? Sort of challenging that, or I'm just paraphrasing. And I thought to myself, at first I recoiled about that. And I thought, I've had a long, long journey of contemplating. I'm a big philosophy buff, and I've read a lot of old mythology. You and I also are connected to Joseph Campbell and his hero's journey, of course.
yeah,
And so, without getting too off on a tangent, we are always shedding and unraveling parts of ourselves that do no longer serve us or do not pertain at the moment. Maybe 10 years ago you were a certain way, and then 10 years now you're not. It's we change taste, and and things that we want, and our goals begin to change as well. We're never static, and so I think that we're always becoming more authentic with ourselves. I think that
very
the
true.
important thing about authenticity, or about being authentic, is also, where am I right now in the present moment? Am I behaving, like you said, with integrity and with transparency, is to the best of my ability? I also believe, I'm kind of old school, and the philosophers, and of course my father used to always tell me this. Are we aware of the consequences of the decisions that we make? Or are we just
Yeah,
looking for hedonism, satisfying our desires and our cravings for the moment? Or are we also disciplining ourselves to shed, right? Because I think that if we are in the mode of seeking and extinguishing, if you will, for the moment, our lusts and our desires, and I'm not just speaking sexually, or just our goals. It's like, I want me, I. We lose, I think, in my humble opinion, I think we lose sight then of our morality, and of a greater purpose to serve others, if we are in the field of personal development. Thus, the importance of having that accountability partner, those friends, right?
yeah, yeah. Very, very important. So if I wish to ask then an interesting question. So we look at living inauthentically when we're not in integrity with ourselves in many ways. So many people have come to the understanding of their own that they are living out of integrity of their own soul, or what is right for them. What would you say would be a good start for them to start transitioning into that living with authenticity, integrity, and really connecting with their soul so that they can truly be who they are rather than these projections of what others might think they should be?
Yes, that's really interesting. I actually did a presentation with the Faster EFT, and I did a presentation, a summit, and the first annual summit, and it was about transforming your relationship with yourself. So that's something that's really interesting. So first of all, I would say your question was full-bodied as well. Um,
Sorry about
but I would,
that.
yeah, but I know, no, it's wonderful. And I would say that one of the most important things is you have to really get honest with yourself.
Hmm.
And you have to really be able um, we hear this so often, and we say, yeah, you're not going to tell me anything new, Sandra, and that is to really accept ourselves where we are. And my ex-husband used to say, work with what you have, not what you wish you had, right? Because then, and it's sort of the becoming, isn't it? I mean, being is a verb. It's not some kind of, we're always going towards our authenticity. We're moving towards that, even if it feels like we're not. So being very honest with yourself about where you are in life, knowing that it's going to be a lifelong journey. But it is really truly about the journey and not the destination. And
Hmm.
so honesty. And then the second thing is it's extremely important to question. I'm a big, this is where the life coach in me kicks in, is that it's so important. Socrates said this, what is it? A life, unexamined life is not worth living. So it's about asking ourselves questions. It's about understanding, not internalizing everything that happens to us or the way people respond to us. That's a tough one, especially when we care about people and people hurt us, right? We have to remember that people disappoint us, but guess what? We disappoint people, right?
Yeah.
Because we have these expectations. So it's just about being honest, questioning ourselves, and we can go a little bit more maybe to examples, real life examples of what that looks like. So accepting ourselves and questioning. And then the third one is, which is the number one, and actually I said this at the summit, it's in such an impediment, and that is unattended projections, psychological projections. Now, for your audience, let me make it very brief. Projections, let me make it simple. They're just assumptions. Look at it as assumptions that we make about ourselves, about other people, situations, and events that have happened or may happen. Okay, just to kind of keep that in line. And we all project, but the important thing is to pull back and ask ourselves, what is this projection about? What can I learn from it? What am I doing in my mind, in my head, to bring that upon myself? And give yourself and other people an opportunity, if there's a misunderstanding or hurt, to at least reconcile that to the best of your ability, because there are people who won't want to resolve any kind of conflict or meet you halfway. And saying all this is really stepping into your authenticity, because then you start to measure and say, I really did the best I could to, for this situation. Or with yourself, how are you talking to yourself? Watch that negative thought pattern.
Yeah, and I the one thing that I've stood by over the past few years, and it actually came out of my shamanic healing, actually, like connecting with the spirit animal of the bear.
Yes, yeah.
I remember like standing in your truth, being strong in who you are, but in a kind and loving way, not in a destructive way towards others or even to yourself, but that comforting way. But knowing that we have to, like you said, we have to be honest with ourselves. If we're not in that place of honesty, there's that age-old saying, honesty is the best policy. It's not just for others, it's just for ourselves, isn't it?
Totally.
But yeah, there's so much you picked up on there. But
Well, how do you see it, Andy? I mean, how do you see your own way of authenticity? What is that for you?
it's something I've pondered a lot, actually, to be quite honest. I've pondered a lot even over the last year, like, what is it to live authentically? And for me, it's just honoring who I am in all the different facets, regardless of what people see or view me as. I've got certain beliefs and ideals about myself and the way I live my lives, and that's fine. I'm not going to force my beliefs or opinions on others, but I will share my truth in a way that it hopefully assists others in awakening, and that for me is my authenticity. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because really living authentically is, there's so many layers to it.
So if I was to ask you then, what was the thing that led you here? You spoke about going to Italy, and Italy is absolutely beautiful. There's so much culture. There's so much culture in Italy. They're very much connected with who they are. I feel they're very, they could say they're quite fiery characters in a way, but lovely people, lovely people. So what was it? What was it that you felt led you to this beautiful place of, I'm going to decide to be and live authentically?
Yeah. Yeah, they are very much, I found Italian people very much connected to, very in touch with themselves in many ways, right? That self-expression. So yeah, and being of yeah, I just loved it. I so are you asking me how I connected or what made me go there? Is that
Yeah, what enlivened your journey to really connecting and living authentically? Because I'd imagine like each and every one of us, none of us started living authentically because I believe we've all been through this conditional programming in
that's
many
it?
ways,
Yes.
so we've all, my soul pathway stuff is all about finding your authentic self in many ways. So how did you transition into that, and what was
In
your calling
Italy.
to, and that was Italy, was it? Yeah.
Yes. So definitely Italy was a rite of passage for me. I had been living, um, I had a pretty decent childhood and until my parents divorced, and then I became sort of it was very, very difficult with my mother. She fell into a huge depression, and she was not a passive depressive person. She was an angry one. And so it was very difficult for me to understand this. And this led me as well, I think, in many ways, trying to be the good daughter, trying to be, this is where some of the codependency that I learned from came from that relationship with my mother. And then I reached a point in my life where I really definitely wanted to explore. And I've always been an adventurer. And I started traveling at a very young age because of my parents, going to different countries. So back then it wasn't so popular. Back in the 70s and the 80s, travel was not always available. But anyway, so I went backpacking to Europe when I was about 18 years old with a cousin. I was there for 3 months in Europe in
Excellent.
hostels and all that, and fell in love with Italy. And just so I came back, and different events happened, unfortunately, that were unfortunate for me. And I just said, I'm getting out. I packed my 2 bags, I saved whatever money I could, and I left to Italy. And I was very fortunate because I lived with a family for a while who took me in. And from there, I was able to really be able to thrive in ways that I had not known. I discovered in Italy really what it was like to be, I would say, completely independent, because, of course, I was living with the family and so forth, but really get to know more who I was, really spread the wings, if you will, outside of my mother's home or whatever. So for me, that was a rite of passage
Yeah.
to explore more myself, and really every area, how resilient I was, and what areas I wasn't. And we have to leave our home, at least for a while, I think, when we're younger, to really explore what that is.
Definitely. No, I completely agree. And but one thing that came to my attention, you know, we're speaking a lot about family here, and family is often where we find our authenticity in a strange way, because I feel
Yes.
authenticity is actually a lot about going back to our roots, isn't it? And I don't know what it is about Italy, but they've got a lovely way of having the family still very much a central role in their lives, in terms of cooking. So there's a lovely way of when they do their cooking,
Food.
pass down the recipes generation to generation. But it's interesting that authenticity, for me, you could say it comes back to family and roots and finding ourselves within that as well.
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept. I think that it's sort of part of that hero's journey, right? Where we leave, right? We're born into the world, and some of us choose to leave, right? And then along the way, you find these obstacles, right? And along the way, you find the guides and the teachers and the people that can help you, and so forth. And as you're shedding, if you will, those layers of who you are not, it's, for me, this life is really discovering who we're not. I know we always want to discover who we are, but in the scheme of it all, it's about who we are not. And then bringing it back, being able to say, like, I'm at an age, in my life where I'm very grateful for what my parents have. I mean, I've always had gratitude, and but yeah, I think it's okay to say this is what I want to keep and this is what I don't want to keep, as far as the mental schemas or beliefs are, right.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't know why I mentioned the aspects of family there, but I just saw some parallels within like the Italian traditional ways of living and also within ourselves. And we look at healing as well, and much of our healing is all about looking at our ancestry, what
Oh
ancestral
yeah.
roots have been passed down
Oh
generation
yeah.
to generation, and what do we need to clear and heal in order to really step into who we are. Because it's breaking down those things that we're not to discover who we are, isn't it? Like you said.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. I think maybe also you're bringing up family as well because it's really the root. We end up either uh, metaphorically marrying or connecting or having personal, intimate relationships with either the mother or the father or both. And I think this is our healing point in our life. It certainly has been for me, attracting certain relationships, whether they're intimate relationships or not, have always reverberated what I needed to heal from my mother and from my father. And I think I'm still doing that in many ways, right? But
Yeah.
the key
Yeah.
is to really, again, lean into the acceptance, self-acceptance as you're working on yourself. And if I could just turn back the clock, I think what I would have done as I was exploring this family lineage and is not to take everything so seriously. I took everything so seriously, and I still have a tendency to do that. I think it's just survival, and so that's something I'm working on, is not to take everything so seriously.
All about connecting back with that inner child, isn't it?
It
That
totally
innocence.
is. I know, yeah.
Uh, it's a funny old journey, isn't it? I think our journey in many ways is,
Yes.
is reconnecting with that innocence, returning to
Yeah.
innocence. I know Joseph Campbell spoke about that as well, didn't he? So
Totally. Total. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Follow the bliss.
yeah, follow the business, and the universe will open doors for where there was only once walls. Said that so many
That's
times now.
right.
So,
That's right.
but yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How we find ourselves. You speaking about the shedding of the skin and re-emerging as someone new. And I spoke to a good friend of mine last week when we spoke about shamanism and stuff like that as well. We spoke about rewilding, and it's all about doing that every day. She was speaking about the fact that we are becoming a new version of ourselves each and every day, aren't we? So
We totally are. It's about, getting up in the morning. One of the things I really ask myself a lot, although I haven't had any much time to contemplate. I'm a big contemplator. I'm not really much of a meditator, but it's again questioning, how can I show up today? Who is it that I need to help, or even including myself? Where do I know that I need to take care of myself? And I do want to say something too that again sounds like, a no-brainer. Um, but I've gone deeper with the concept. It really isn't. Living authentically and purposefully is really not about how much money you make in life. Although we do need, at least as of now, we need money, right, to be able to uh, get things that we want or that we need. But it really isn't about that. Sometimes when we step into things, people confuse that as to what they're going to do for their life. I mean, you could be working at a phone store or whatever, selling iPhones or what have you, but really living purposefully and fulfilling ways outside of that work. And I think that that's what I'd like to impart to your audience, is that it's not about finding that ideal job or having to go back to university and spending all kinds of money. It's really about stepping into yourself and seeing how you can be of service to
yeah,
yourself and to others, if of course that is something that one wants to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm a personal believer that we go on our journey to find ourselves. And when we found ourselves, our mission then becomes to serve others. It's like that shift from individual self to growing and evolving and stepping into who we are, and then finally through the lessons and learnings and growth, that's where we give back in our own unique ways, which is in many ways about that authenticity as well, isn't it?
It is totally. It is totally. Yeah. I mean, I've found myself in a situation now currently that I've been in for some time that has been all about um, showing up and just being who I am and really being. I mean, of course, everybody processes things differently, but it's about staying focused on what's important to you. You know, for me, my person and how what I believe. I'm not, even though I can change, because that's part of neuroplasticity, right? We want to be malleable, we want to be flexible and be able to learn different things and different ways of thinking. But I think the foundational parts of who I am are extremely important for me. I mean, I am of service just like you. You know, I feel since I was a child that there was something that I really needed to do.
Yeah.
And so I just try to stay very focused on that. And I think you do too. And that's, I think, what's really good. I know that I've spoken to you so many times about that, and that's where you and I really, really resonate. You know, we're more into stepping into our authenticity today than, you know, God knows what else. You know, this ambition that might distract us from that. Because, you know, I mean, there's no money in the world. I know people who do. We hear this all the time. You know, people have money, but they're miserable.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
money really can't buy you the resources that are intrinsic.
Yeah. I did a short video on YouTube, and I said the greatest gift that you can give yourself is the becoming of who you are,
Yeah.
and the loving yourself fully. If that's the gift that you want to give yourself in 2020, that you've succeeded something remarkably amazing. You know, um, so that's the way I see it. Anyway, that's the way I see it as well. And
Yeah, yeah, no, I like that other perspective too. You know, I'm very much aligned with what you're saying as well.
if I was to ask you a
Definitely.
question, then one thing that came up in thought through our conversation today was fear. Fear is often a byproduct of conditioning, you could say. And it's often fear that prevents people from living that authentic life because they're afraid of either maybe the expectations of others, either or even they might not be able to live up to their own expectations of who they are. But I wonder, how do you see fear playing a role in impeding again our authenticity, and how do we shift through that so in terms of finding and discovering ourselves?
Very good question. Fear is something that's just embedded in the human nature, isn't it? And I think it's the fear that really can either help us avoid what we need to do or move us in the direction where we need to go. Because many times fear can propel us. It's the impetus to really success, isn't it? We know many people who were afraid to be financially poor, so it drove them to become successful. Um,
Yeah.
an example. So fear is not really, I don't look at fear as something completely negative, if that's helpful to begin with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that fear is definitely a barometer to indicate what's either what we're trying to either avoid or help us move in the direction we need to. And I think it's very much connected. I think what really can screw us up is the emotion. I think we need to learn. This is where faster EFT, this is where I got so really hooked on faster EFT, is because we know neurologically, and we know by science that the only reason we might have a fear, well, first of all, it's a learned behavior. And it doesn't have to be learned. Again, it can be vicariously, we can be watching something or whatever. I mean, a good example of that is, some people have fear of clowns because they watch a lot of scary movies with clowns. That's a learned behavior. It's not like a clown literally attacked that individual for them to have the fear. So we can unlearn certain fears. We can understand them and help us then become comfortable with whatever it is in the context of that fear. Yeah. But we don't want to get rid of fear completely, because it helps us move, if we're walking down a dark alley, right? We get a hit, we're walking down this dark alley, we're by ourselves, we pick up on things. Well, we want that fear, right? To be able to move us physically into a more safe place.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But I think what the fear you're speaking about as well is really just what is it that we fear? What is it that we want? Is it in the context of goal setting? And so it really just depends. But again, I want to fall back on those three things that I said. One, be honest with yourself. Two, look out for those projections, because your fears, you might be taking them so seriously. It's like, well, I'm afraid. Okay, well, that emotion is definitely a barometer, but investigate, be your own detective. What is it that you're really afraid of? And don't be shy to hire someone like myself or you, Andy, to help you navigate. I mean, we cannot do this alone.
Yeah.
We cannot, we have to invest in ourselves. And so questioning, right? Questioning, I think, is a way to move through. And I don't know if I answered that question of yours.
Yeah, no, I love what you answered there. I mean, I asked some aspects of fear, but you elaborated on it in many different ways, so it's fantastic. As we move towards the end of the interview, we're just coming towards the last few questions here. We know what we're experiencing right now globally with this pandemic. And we know it's affecting all of our lives. And we know in many ways that this can be affecting how we live authentically. So my question is, how can we, or people during these times, take this opportunity to be more authentic within themselves?
I think it's a great opportunity to step into more our authentic self, precisely because that's all we have is ourself. And I don't mean to sound abstract or philosophical in a very weird way, but really, this is given. I know that 2019 has been tremendously. It's been a life shifter for me in every area of my life. Was completely turned upside down, and maybe that will be for another podcast at some point. And I will say that the one thing I kept coming to was myself. And so authenticity is activated right here, right now. It requires nothing else but you, because it's you. So I think that, again, with everything going on, we are given time, which we didn't have before. And we spend too much time, I think, on social media. I think we need to just step back, maybe take a walk, do some body movement, whatever that might mean, and ask yourself those questions. How do I want to be? What does it mean for me to step into my authenticity? What does it mean to be authentic, right? The true self today. And what would that look like for me a couple of years down the road? Am I going to, so there's a concept, and this is tied to authenticity, I think. There's a concept that is not new, but Robert Smith in his Fast Wave 2 modality, the concept is lower model of the world and the upper model of the world. The lower model of the world says, I'm a victim. It's your fault. It's everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
And the upper model is, okay, this is happening, but I'm responsible for the way I respond or react.
Love it. Yeah.
And although I don't have control over everything, I can have control over myself. And I think that stepping into authenticity is not always a smooth ride. It's not a path that is, it's easy to tread. It's a messy one. Adyashanti, who is one of the great Zen Buddhist philosophers that I actually like, talks about that. He has a really good quote on how messy it is sometimes. So when somebody tells you that it's going to be completely easy and all you have to do is just smile and show up, well, of course, a dose of optimism is always good. But yeah, I would say really take advantage of waking up in the morning. And if you notice that you're uncomfortable by yourself, notice that. What is it that's so uncomfortable? What are the habits that you created around always having to be with other people, or having to be on social media, or having to watch television? So I think this is one of the ways to take advantage.
Yeah, and again, I love what you mentioned there. Waking up in the morning and things aren't the way you want them to be. You're unhappy with yourself. Be honest with that. That's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't always like where I am at, to be true, but it's like, okay, this is where I'm at, sometimes I'm in a state of a little bit of confusion, and I think it's okay. I just accept that it's that way, and anyone who pretends to be a healer, shaman, coach, or psychologist, it doesn't matter, who tells you, oh, I just live this happy life, that's not always necessarily true. There's hope. I would want to say something about this. Look at life, don't look for happiness. Look for living a satisfying, fulfilling, purposeful life. I think this is optimal. This is what's going to bring you then moments of happiness. Yeah, and authenticity.
Excellent. Love it. Yeah, love it. And I'm not a fan of the love and light spirituality.
Yeah, me too.
I love it's love, light, shadow, wholeness, and all the beautiful things that are what this world is.
Right.
We all know that there's darkness and there's light. Let's just honor all of it. It's all of those aspects of self as well. Because when we can honor and love our shadow, we can find joy in that anyway. We can find happiness in that. Which is
That's right, Andy.
beautiful.
That's right. I think you really tapped into that. I think it's about that. I mean, we have a tendency to compare ourselves quite a bit, I think, in society. And again, it's I think that when you start practicing what we're both talking about, then it is easier. It's like our nervous system relaxes just a little bit more. And I think that then opens our consciousness a lot more, and because we're relaxed, we're not we're not trying to hold on to something, and we're not resisting.
Definitely. So we're coming towards the end of our interview, and I want to say thank you so much for joining me today and sharing what it means to live an authentic life, be authentic, and be real with yourself. I've really enjoyed this conversation as always
too.
anyway. But are there any parting messages that you want to first of all share? One golden nugget to pass on before we close out.
Yes, very interesting. So it comes into mind again. Sorry if I sound like a broken record, but I feel it's urgent. Really, it really is. We're living in a time where these projections / assumptions, I was saying, we really have to watch them, because television, and even if we're outside the box thinkers and the research that we do, I think it's just really important to make sure that we are giving ourselves and other people an opportunity to change for the better, to evolve maybe. Change and evolution can be interchangeable words, but I would probably then choose the opportunity to evolve.
Yeah.
Because so many times I've been in so many situations where people just want to blame others and they don't want to take a deeper look that we are what we attract as well. And so really it's important, it's urgent that you start taking responsibility, full responsibility for everything that is in your life. Not responsibility for other people necessarily, of course not, but accepting, looking around. This is where I live. This is what I look like. This is the clothes I have. This is having that understanding, that relationship, and then moving from saying, okay, what can I do? What are some things that I can do to move towards what I would feel, what I would think is authentic and successful.
Mhm. Fantastic, fantastic, and I think that is a perfect place to end the show. And I say thank you again for joining me. But one final question, and it's definitely the last question: where can we find out more about yourself and what you do?
Thanks. Thank you. So my website is journeytoauthenticliving.com. And of course, Andy has helped me out with that website there. And I know there's still some work there. So, but you'll see my story. You'll see a little bit about me. And I'm also on Facebook at Journey to Authentic Living. And I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel, which is Journey to Authentic Living - Sandra Rojo, ROJO. So those are the few places that you can find me. I'm very accessible. I mean, if you write me a message or send me an email, I'm very good at responding as well. So yeah, thank you.
Excellent. And for those of you who are listening, don't worry too much about the links, because all of them will be below this video or linked with the podcast as well, so you can easily connect and access Sandra. So with that, I'll say thank you all for listening. Thank you, Sandra, again for being here. Much love and blessings for the year ahead, and take care. See you all again soon.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank you. Bye.
It's also about the masculine coming back into balance.
I had reconciled my mind and my soul.
A world opened up that words cannot describe.
But you have to love yourself. You can only love another to the extent to which you love yourself. That simple yet profound truth.